Welcome to Confessions of a Parent Coach. I'm Coach, a mother of four, and potty talker, Ann Kaplan. This is the podcast where I confess something from my own parenting and coaching life, teach a lesson around it, and answer your questions. Even we parenting experts are far from perfect, and the real magic happens when we get down with all that imperfection. We get into the gritty side of parenting here, so earbud up and dive in.
Welcome into another episode of the podcast, listeners. I'm so excited to be here with you again today. I know for you all, you've been receiving podcast episodes every week because I'm such a diligent little gold star performer. But from my end, I batched a ton of episodes earlier in this fall to create space for me to walk the Camino de Santiago, which I'm going to talk about in a later podcast episode with some of my friends, and then immediately go into my retreat that I run every year for moms. And oh my gosh, this year's retreat was the best yet. I can't even put into words how magical it was. It was incredible. I'm still in the afterglow 100% from just like epic, like an epic group of women. The weather was amazing. I had just everybody was just like really took the topics that we were talking about and just ran with them and really went for it. And, anyways, it was just incredible. If you're thinking or if you have thought in the past about coming on the retreat, like, I really encourage you to do that. And because this year was so epic, I have people already signing up for next year, even though it's a whole year away. Like there's even thoughts rumbling around in my head about being able to run two back-to-back retreats to accommodate more people. So if you are thinking about joining, don't wait because spots will fill up. It is almost always booked completely. Um, and I have a feeling this year it's going to be completely booked pretty quick. So that's a total sidebar. The reason why I'm so excited to be here with you today isn't just the topic that I'm talking about it, but it's because I've had such a long break from recording podcast episodes that I'm like, I was just getting ready to like turn on my microphone and I could feel myself getting excited. Like, oh, I get to talk to my people. I'm so excited to share this or that. So anyway, if you ever wonder if taking a break and stepping back from something could be useful, I promise you it is. I just had a coaching session yesterday with a client who I'm doing business coaching for. And she was talking about how, she's gotten so plugged in and excited about her work, which is wonderful, but she's neglecting these other parts of her life that she knows she needs to address. And we started talking about tapping into that absence makes the heart grow fonder mentality, that stepping away from something you love is not only good because you're doing something else and you're bringing balance into your life, but you also are giving yourself time to miss it and love it more and appreciate it more and really take pleasure in it when you step back into it. So, by the way, that philosophy applies to parenting as well, not just your work or something like that, or the gym. We always need a rest day from the gym, right? But today, what I want to talk about is the subject of this podcast episode, why I've stopped journaling. And I kind of want to help you apply this more generally to your own self-care or self-growth practice. So that's actually also my confession for you guys, especially if you're working with me already, you have a whole workbook that has these incredible worksheets in there. And I wish there was a different word for them because worksheet makes me think of like when you're in third grade and did you guys all do this? The Mad Minute. We had to do that where you had like a worksheet that was all different math problems and you had a minute to try to get as many of them done as possible. And there was always a couple kids in my class that got all of them done and I only ever got like half of them done or whatever. But anyways, that's what I think of when I think of worksheets. But the worksheets that you get when you work with me, you get a workbook in the mail, and in there are these worksheets, for lack of a better word. But they're really just guided journaling. It's about journaling in a way that's not daunting because all you're doing is responding to a question that I asked you. but it's also a really good reflective, open-ended, empowering question that I've asked you. And you don't have to fill up the whole page. It's not just like a blank page that's staring at you. It's maybe just like a paragraph sized chunk of space that you need to fill up, right? So if you are working with me, if you've been working with me, you know that I have espoused journaling for years and years and years. And I used to journal every day, and it is very, very powerful tool. And I don't I stand by everything that I've ever said about journaling. It is magnificent. If you haven't tried it before, I really, really encourage you to do that. And I myself have not journaled for probably since May, and I'm recording this right now in late October. So, what is that? May, June, July, August, September, about 6 months. Yeah. So, and unlike past times when I've stopped journaling and I just accidentally stopped journaling, right? Like I just quit, or I didn't even choose to quit. I would say I just fell off the wagon. I just got out of the habit. Stopped doing it. And then, weeks went by, and then I'd look at myself and be like, why did I do that? Journaling makes me feel so much better, and blah, blah, blah. This time I actually made an intentional choice to not do that anymore. And that's what I want to talk about today. And I want to hopefully help you apply that to whatever your self growth practice is to really make it your own. So, through all my years of self discovery and my own personal growth journey and all of that stuff, one of the things that I've learned about myself, and I mean, I would say predominantly the Enneagram has been, really helpful in this, learning, but, it wasn't the only tool. Let's just put it that way. But I'm an Ennea type 1, which means that I tend to be very rigid. I can be very judgmental, categorical. I really love to organize and compartmentalize things and really codify stuff. I can become very dogmatic. I can become very almost like too structured to the point of like rigidity. That's one of many aspects about the one. And so for me, having structure and routine and self-discipline and things like that is not a problem in the sense that I can do it very easily. It is a problem in the sense that I overdo it in those arenas. And what I realized I was doing was, kind of taking my journaling practice and making it just like all of those sort of egoic tendencies that I have. It was becoming this rule, like I'm not allowed to go to bed until I've journaled today, or, I have this specific goal that I'm working towards and I'm going to use journaling to get me there, come hell or high water. Right. And, even just the act of writing things down is taking something that's conceptual and maybe vague and esoteric that's in my mind and making it concrete by writing it, putting pen to paper and writing it down. And there's extreme value in that process. Is one of the reasons why I encourage my clients, unless they really can't do it any other way, to write by hand when they're journaling. If they have to type, if they have to do voice to text, I totally get it. I have a son with dysgraphia. Some people can't write, but if you can write, I really encourage you to journal that way, because the act of physically like translating or transmuting your concepts and ideas and emotions into a physical manifestation, which is this ink on the page, is actually has been scientifically proven to actually neurologically do something different in your brain than typing does or than talking does. But for me personally, at this moment in my growth journey, my growth edge is about becoming less rigid. My growth edge is about becoming more wishy-washy and softening and allowing things to be fluid and not committing to one thing or another, because that is where I am actually weakest in my personality, and where as I embrace that part of myself, embracing things like uncertainty, non-attachment, that sort of fluid transitory nature of thoughts and emotions, that is where, as I embrace that, I grow, I thrive, I become maybe the next version of myself. And so choosing, not accidentally forgetting and giving up on journaling, but actually consciously saying, you know what, this journaling practice that I have is actually working against me right now because I'm concretizing and committing to and attaching myself to everything in my brain by writing it down on a piece of paper. I'm not going to do that anymore. And so I made that choice. And I sure, just like I was saying, absence makes the heart grow fonder. Like I'm sure my future contains journaling in it at some point. And I'm sure that when I come back to journaling, you're going to get another podcast episode that's like, you guys, have you heard about journaling? It's amazing. Everybody should be doing it because I will, be in a new phase of my self, my goals, my personal work, all of that stuff. But right now, in this moment, I am really confident and actually kind of proud of myself that I have chosen to quit something, which is not normal for me, that I've chosen to lean into the world of gray instead of being needing black and white, that I've allowed myself to sort of like almost like organically flow into, in my growth and development instead of being super, concrete and driven about it. And that's where I'm at right now. And there's two things that I want to sort of highlight for you from this story. The first is, making your self care, I don't want to say self care, making your personal growth personal is really what this is about. Really understanding who you are and stepping into a place of authority. I'm the authority on me. I know what works for me. And I had a session with a client just earlier this week where we had this very conversation also about journaling, where so this was a couple that I'm working with. And one of the couples is like, I really want to journal. I know it helps me. I'm working on creating this more like daily practice about it. It really, really makes a big difference for me when I do that. And at the exact same time, his wife was saying, I can't journal. That's not good for me. I really instead try to, just ruminate and think about and muse and meditate on these things that maybe other people would be using as a journal prompt. I'm using it more as like a meditation prompt per se. And we had this conversation and what we came away with was like, yes, for sure. Please know yourself and honor yourself. Make your personal growth personal because the more personal it is, or the more personalized it is, the more you're actually going to do it. You're not going to give up because it feels right to you and it's meeting you where you're at and it's nourishing and it's really honoring who you are and what you like and how you thrive and all that stuff. But also it's going to be more impactful for you because you're receiving it in the way that you will most deeply learn, right? And the other piece about making your stuff personal is that you're taking responsibility. So the analogy I give is like when you work when you work at a company and you punch a clock for somebody else, when you have an employer, especially like back in the day when we were like young kids getting our first jobs and like working at Wendy's or something like that, right? Like you actually like I'm so old that I remember actually having a punch card, like a piece of paper that I would pick up and put in the time machine that punched the time that I checked into work. And then then I punched out at the end of the day. And when I did that, I was done. And it wasn't me that decided I'm done. It was my boss. And it wasn't me that decided when I had to start. It was my boss. And there's something really nice about being taken care of that way. And when you start working for yourself, you realize like nobody's going to tell me that I'm done working and no one's going to tell me that I have to start working. It's on me. I've chosen this freedom. Freedom and responsibility are two sides of the exact same coin. The freedom of entrepreneurship means you have also taken on the responsibility of time management in a whole new way. And it's the same thing with this journaling thing or any type where you decide, you know what, that's not my thing. I'm going to opt out of XYZ, you know, approach to personal growth and I'm going to make my personal growth personal. I'm going to take ownership. You have chosen to give yourself the freedom to pursue your growth on your own terms. And the flip side of that coin is you've also taken on the responsibility of doing that too. So instead of your coach telling you, you need to journal every day, it's you telling yourself, like, okay, I don't have this piece of paper and this pen anymore. I don't have this reminder on my phone to journal. I don't have this rule that I'm not allowed to go to bed until I journal. So I have kind of given up all of these like sort of external structural things that keep me honest and keep me accountable to my own growth practices. But I still desperately do need to meditate on, ruminate on, process through these burning questions that I would otherwise have been journaling about. And now it's the responsibility is on me to choose to clean my kitchen in silence, like I did right before I came up here to record this podcast episode, instead of listening to a podcast while I clean the kitchen. Or same thing, drive in silence instead of, binging Netflix or listening to music. Like I have to take the reins and realize like just because I'm not journaling anymore doesn't mean I'm done with this like deep introspection. It's just happening in a different way. And I'm sort of taking the training wheels off a little bit. So with those ideas, that idea of like taking responsibility for your personal growth and making your personal growth personal, where is something where you are trying to kind of wedge yourself in or do this thing that you're supposed to do because it's supposed to, help you or make you a better person, but you know that you are, kind of swimming upstream or barking up the wrong tree for yourself? And can you take ownership of that and say, well, here's a different way that would work better for me? And step into that responsibility. Can you release the, external rules and sort of what's guardrails, that's the word I'm looking for, while still staying on course? And can you also make it so personal that you're able to say, I actually can't do that. No, I need those guardrails and I'm not ready for that yet. And I can promise you that 10 years ago, I would not have been ready to say, oh, I've got this personal growth thing. I'm just kind of doing it in my head. It's fine. No, I wouldn't. I wouldn't have been actually accountable to myself the way that I am now. And I wouldn't have had, and this is the last point I want to make about this, I wouldn't have had the insight to recognize the subtleties between doing something because it's actually in the direction of my growth path and I still am kind of pushing myself and growing, versus doing something because it's the easy way out or I'm avoiding doing my personal work. Like we know, I promise you out there listening, like, if you are doing something, you're doing something that feels good. Are you doing it because it's the right thing for you? Like it's you're following sort of your best direction and you're following your bliss and stuff like that? Or are you doing something that feels good because you're avoiding the thing that feels bad? If you have that ability to kind of suss that out for yourself, if you know that you can stay accountable to yourself, if you maybe are starting to realize that some of your personal growth practices are actually more like crutches, or security blankets, maybe it's time for you to loosen the reins a little bit or give yourself permission to say, you know what, I'm not going to do that thing anymore, and like come out with your little hot take on journaling or meditation or whatever it is, right? Just think about it. Think about it. And how does that translate also into your parenting? Because that is what we talked about so much on the retreat this last week, was the concept of wildness and freedom um and unfettered energy in your parenting. Where might be there be areas where you are clinging to specific practices that really are more like security blankets, but you know that the growth direction for your family comes from breaking some of those rules and being a little bit more untamed. So think about all of those things. And I hope this has been really helpful for you. And I will talk to you again next week. Bye, everybody.
The episode is over, but there's more waiting for you. You can grab my free workbook, Getting Kids to Listen the First Time, that walks you through the fundamental principles I teach all of my clients and applies them to this very universal parenting challenge. So if you're sick of repeating yourself all day long or just want to learn more about my style, you'll definitely want to go to bit.ly/kidswholisten. And if you're ready to work with me, let's meet. Set up a free call at bit.ly/Kaplan call, and let's create an action plan that gets you exactly where you want to go. And of course, links to all this goodness are in the show notes. Thanks for joining, and I'll see you next time.